Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Kimberly Hepner, and today is August 21st, 2014. When we're not here on air, you can always check us out on arh.noaa.gov, and you can access all the weather information that we have on this program for you. And you can also get your weather via the phone line by dialing 1-800-472-0391, and you can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and you can search that via our social media tabs that are available on the website. Now on to the important topics of the day across the state. Well, fire weather has slightly increased across the eastern areas near the Alaska Range and just north of that area, as we have high pressure, as you'll see in just a moment. First, taking a look out towards the west, you can see an area of clouds across the Bering Sea, and what you want to do is focus on the circulation along the far western Bering, as we have a low pressure that's circulating some clouds and a jet stream that's streaming just to the south of the Aleutian chain. This is bringing some wraparound moisture all across the eastern parts of the Bering. Taking a look at that one more time, you can see this other moisture that's pulling up through the North Pacific, and closer to home, this is reaching all the way just to the south of the Kenai Peninsula. So overall, we have an area of high pressure across the eastern Gulf of Alaska, extending all the way up into the northern areas of the state. We do have a low pressure system that's just exiting just to the northeast of the Brooks Range, and this is keeping everything in the clouds across the Brooks Range and north towards the Arctic coast. Now across the southeast, they did have some patchy fog conditions this morning, and that has cleared out. And then across the Cook Inlet, some patchy fog still lingering really just across the central areas of the Cook Inlet. So otherwise, just some clouds popping up across the mountainous areas and a few showers along the eastern part of the Brooks Range, and mainly all the rain not disturbing the mainland right now, just south of Kodiak Island and the area around the low pressure in the Bering. So taking a look at the charts this afternoon, here's the low pressure that I mentioned in the northern Pacific. The rain is really located along the center of the low pressure system here. Here's the ridge of high pressure across the eastern part of the Gulf of Alaska, and this is continuing to shift to the east and possibly bring some lower clouds across the eastern Gulf overnight. Across the state, we see some white along mainly the cloudy areas, so pop-up afternoon showers along the mountainous areas. Along the northern tier of the state, still some breaks in the clouds as you go back towards the Seward Peninsula. And then along the southwestern areas, they saw some breaks in the clouds today too. So overall, a nice day, even extending out into the eastern parts of the Bering. Right here, the occluded front associated with the low pressure system across the western Bering has weaken through the day, so we're seeing unorganized rain just diminishing with this low pressure system. Now as we head through the night, this low pressure system will continue just to weaken. Some light scattered shower activity will continue around this. High pressure across the northern Bering will see some patchy fog condition and moving all the way into the Alaska Peninsula. A weak upper level disturbance will bring a chance for some light rain showers, but we're not expecting any accumulation with that. So mainly just patchy fog conditions moving into the Alaska Peninsula overnight. Some gusty winds just picking up ahead of this low pressure system across the eastern part of the Aleutians. Now the ridging will stay across the Gulf waters and low clouds will move in, so that might prevent some of the fog from developing as it did this morning. So still expect patchy fog overnight again for the Cook Inlet and possible patchy fog along the eastern Gulf waters as that high pressure remains in control there. Across the rest of the mainland, we'll see isolated chance for showers across the mountain areas and a thunderstorm possibly south here of the Brooks Range. But we'll see mainly cloud across the Arctic coast in the northwest as high pressure is in control across the Seward Peninsula and patchy fog conditions all the way across from the Seward Peninsula and the Arctic waters. Now, as we head into your forecast for tomorrow, notice that this pressure gradient across the northwest begins to tighten as we have a front that's moving down from the Arctic, and this will cause some gusty winds, small craft winds for the northwestern coast tomorrow. Along the Arctic coast, this low pressure system will continue to weaken. However, a chance for some lingering showers with that low pressure system. Weak low pressure off towards Canada will bring a upper level disturbance along the Alaska range, and we'll see some isolated shower activity, but as ridging again pushes in towards the mainland, that's going to suppress most of the rain across the state. So should be mostly dry as we head into your day tomorrow for the mainland, and then this low pressure system that's moving towards the southern Gulf waters will bring a warm front towards the southern Gulf, so lingering showers across this low pressure system should stay just to the east of Kodiak Island. We'll see some light shower activity across the Alaska Peninsula as this low pressure continues to shove towards the east. Very slowly at that, and it's a weak low system. At 1008, it's actually weakening, but this gradient ahead of it will keep some gusty winds as this low pressure slowly moves towards the east. Across the western part of the Bering, we're not going to see too much change here, mainly just fog conditions stretching all the way towards the Bering Strait. And then as we head into your day on Saturday, this low pressure system will be moving towards the east and slightly north. The track of the system may change just a little bit from what we have in here right now, but overall, a warmer air mass is going to be coming up from the North Pacific, so we'll see some rain associated with this, possibly creeping up into Kodiak by late in the day on Saturday, and also into the southwestern coastal areas, like I said, late on Saturday. Some gusty winds will develop along the northern tier of this low pressure system, bring some gustier winds back in towards the northern Bering, but small craft, so 25 to 35 miles per hour with the highest gusts. And then along the backside, we'll see some gusty winds across the western Bering. And then for the mainland, we'll see one of the driest days and warm for this time of the year, as we don't always see this many breaks in the clouds. So hopefully Saturday will work out to be a nice warm forecast for you. Possible patchy fog conditions developing in the morning. However, we will be on a drying trend. Isolated showers along the southeast, mainly towards the Dixon entrance with weak low pressure in that area. And then along the coastal areas, we'll see this chance for light showers along the northwest as this cold front slowly nudges in towards the mainland. However, we're going to stay in the influence of high pressure through the first part of the weekend. So with that being said, warm temperatures all across the southern areas of the state up into the mid-60s to mid-70s. 72 reporting at Annette this afternoon was the warmest temperature, and then into the as you wrap around towards the northern coast, we saw some cooler temperatures near 60 degrees. Across the interior, they had seen temperatures up into the low to mid-60s with slightly cooler temperatures, but not very cold, very warm this time of the year, up in the mid-40s to lower 50s. We saw up to 46 at Dead Horse, but lower 50s as you wrapped around towards the Seward Peninsula, quickly warmed up into the lower 60s as you dropped towards the Kuskokwim Delta. They saw temperatures in the southwest of 66 degrees, and then as you went into the Alaska Peninsula, where they saw a little bit more cloud cover, up in the upper 50s. Across the rest of the Aleutians, fairly warm at 52 to 54 degrees out towards Shimia. Pribilof Islands were right at 56 and 58 degrees at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Towards St. Lawrence Island, also in the mid-50s for them. Now, as we head in your nighttime forecast, not much change overnight for the Aleutian chain, in the mid-50s, across the southwest in the lower 50s, and then the coldest temperatures will be right across the interior in the upper 30s to lower 40s. Along the northern coast, expect temperatures dropping into the lower 40s. Across the Gulf of Alaska, we'll see a temperature range in the lower 40s to the lower 50s, depending on if they break out of clouds. That might allow them to cool a little bit more. And then across the southeast, anywhere between 45 degrees and 55 degrees overnight. As we head into your temperatures tomorrow, with the high pressure in control, we'll quickly warm up in the afternoon hours with 70-degree temperatures all across the interior. Perhaps slightly cooler across the southeast tomorrow as some cloud cover creeps on later in the afternoon hours, and then across the Gulf Coast, everyone should see in the mid-60s by the afternoon. And then across the coast, not much change in temperatures along the Arctic, with temperatures up in the near 50 or just over. Across the southwest, expect temperatures in the mid-60s, and then in the upper 50s again to lower 60s, maybe slightly warmer for the Alaska Peninsula. Now, as we look at your flying weather, lots of clouds across the Bering will cause MVFR conditions to IFR conditions with the low pressure as it stays socked over the Bering here. Across the Gulf of Alaska, the low pressure moving north will cause IFR to MVFR ceilings across the coast, but should stay out of the southeast for the most part. And across the mainland, large area of VFR there, with some conditions MVFR in the morning and then clearing out later in the day as that low pressure moves a little bit further to the north. Across the northwest, expect MVFR to IFR right off the coast. Now, looking at your passes in more depth, Anaktuvuk Pass will be MVFR in the morning and then at least clear to VFR. And then Adigan Pass will be mainly VFR with possible MVFR staying across the northern entrance. Looking at your Lake Clark and Merrill passes, both will be VFR tomorrow, as well as Rainy Pass. And then across Windy will be VFR all day, and Isabel will be VFR. And Mentasta will be VFR, and Tanita Pass will also be VFR. And looking at Portage, might be MVFR in the morning, and then we'll see ceilings clear to VFR to probably clear ceilings really for the day. And then Chilkoot and White Pass will also be VFR for the day. And looking at your freezing levels tomorrow, 6,000 across the northern tier of the state, and then a gradual climb from the Alaska Peninsula to the Gulf to 12,000 feet. And then across the Bering, expect 6,000 with a slow climb towards the eastern Aleutians, 8 to 10,000 feet. Freezing levels are still well north of in the Arctic coast. All right, looking at the icing for tomorrow, main concerns are going to be across a low pressure system along the Aleutians, but the icing will be above 10,000. So there's another area just to the northeastern parts of the state above 8,000, and southeast looks good for tomorrow. Now, looking at your jet stream, we have this low pressure system across the Bering. So here's the upper jet stream that's going to be pushing it towards the east, but there's not a lot of movement, and along the ridge here we can see the strongest is well to the south of our area, so very weak flow pushing these systems in an easterly direction. Here's the low pressure across the Bering, looking at a change of direction, so from east to a southwesterly direction, and then southeast as you move towards the Alaska Peninsula. Strongest winds here are going to be to the south of the Gulf of Alaska, so very light flow out of the west all across the mainland for your day on Friday. And across the southeast, again, a light flow, but an onshore flow by the afternoon. And then looking at your 3,000-foot winds for tomorrow, a very similar picture as We have the winds rotating around the low pressure system out there in the Bering a little bit stronger, between 20 and 25 knots along the north side of the low, a little bit stronger, up to 35 knots across the central and eastern Aleutians. Now across the state, light winds tomorrow, 5 knots out of the westerly direction, and across the Gulf as high pressure remains in control there. And looking at your turbulence tomorrow, that's going to be associated with the low pressure system across the Aleutians and also below 4,000 feet, but that's going to be off the northwest coast. Now in just a moment, we'll be back with your marine forecast.
A busy day in the sky at the end of August.
Hey there, stargazers. I'm Dean Regas, astronomer for the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. We're here to help you find your way around the sky tonight. The moon can eclipse the sun, but can it go in front of a planet?
You bet it can. We don't call this an eclipse, it's an occultation. They are so rare that I've seen way more eclipses than occultations.
On August 31st, the moon will appear near Mars and Saturn. The moon is close to covering a planet, but not quite.
But earlier in the day on August 31st, you just may see the moon occult one of those planets. Which one? And how can you maybe possibly see it if you're really lucky? Let's show you.
Okay, we have our sky set up for Monday, August 25th at 9:15 p.m. facing southwest. 2 bright stars only about 20 degrees above the horizon should grab your attention.
They will appear almost equal in brightness, but look closely. They are different colors. Mars is the lower, oranger one, and Saturn is the higher, yellower one.
Although they appear close together, Mars and Saturn are really far from Earth and from each other. Mars is over 120 million miles from us, and Saturn is over 940 million miles away. Notice there's another bright star low in the west. That's Spica, the brightest star in the constellation Virgo the Maiden.
Now look what happens when we advance the time day by day. Here's the 26th, the 27th, the 28th. Each night the planets spread out a little more and Spica gets lower in the sky.
Then here is August 29th at 9:15 p.m. Wow, the slender waxing crescent moon is right next to Spica.
Now let's go forward to August 30th. The moon is lit up a little more and closer to our planets. And here is August 31st. Cool. That'll definitely be a nice sight to see. But the moon didn't block out any planetary light, or did it?
It did, but it happened earlier in the day. Like an eclipse, to see the moon occult a planet, you have to be at the right place at the right time. In this case, we're watching the sky from Washington, D.C. at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The waxing crescent moon has just risen in the eastern sky. It will be very low in the sky and tough to see through the glow of daytime.
But let's dim down the glare of the sun and zoom in with a telescope to see what's happening. Just to the left of the moon, we can see the unmistakable shape of my favorite ring planet, Saturn.
Now, let's advance time minute by minute. At about 1:15 p.m., the moon will slide in front of Saturn, first blocking out one side of the rings, then the planet, then the other side of the rings. Poof! Saturn's gone.
But not for long. The moon will continue to shift in its orbit around the Earth, and after less than an hour, pop! Saturn will pop its rings out the other side. That is an occultation. Now, I know what you're thinking.
That I want some M&Ms?
No, you're always thinking that.
Oh.
What you're thinking is, how can you see all this in the daytime?
Oh yeah. How can I see all this in the daytime?
You probably can't, but it is possible if you have a telescope.
And you have amazingly clear skies low in the east.
You can find planets in the daytime with a telescope if you know where to look. The daytime moon is a huge help. Aim the telescope at the moon and fish around for the planet.
Then you might be wondering, do I have to be in Washington, D.C. to see this? No. You may technically be able to see this from most locations in the eastern third of the U.S. In Gainesville, I'll be able to see the whole thing, if the clouds cooperate. Miami, Florida is in a good shape to see it too.
Notice the different path that Saturn takes behind the moon. Miami, Washington, and Cincinnati. From Cincinnati, Ohio, it's tougher but possible. But from St. Louis, Salt Lake City, and Seattle, sorry, you're out of luck.
No matter where you live, check out the skies at the end of August for our two planets, Mars and Saturn.
And look for the moon joining the fun on August 31st. It's all there when you
Keep looking up.
All right, for the next few days, we're going to have a couple of opportunities to actually look up at the stars. Now on to your marine forecast. Across Alaska, all the ices remain to the north of the coast, except for this small area just off of Prudhoe Bay. So there hasn't been any change since yesterday. So other than the ice just to the off the coast of Prudhoe Bay and between Kaktovik, there is no ice to mention. So good news on that change, that there's no change. Now the weak flow that's across the eastern Gulf today is going to pretty much stay the same way tomorrow. Lighter winds across the channels are going to pick up towards the Lynn Canal out of the south tomorrow, around 10 knots or so. And then towards the Dixon entrance, expect a northwesterly flow across these areas between 10 and 15 knots. The outside waters will see a westerly flow to northwesterly flow between 10 and 15 knots. Seas on the inside channels will be between 2 and 3 feet. The outer waters will be between 3 and 5. The highest seas will be near the Dixon entrance. And then as we head into your day on Saturday, a little bit stronger flow out of the west and northwesterly direction with southerly winds staying up towards Lynn Canal, all between 10 and 15 knots. And then seas again will be between 2 and 3 knots across, 2 to 3 feet across the inner channels and then 3 to 5 feet across the outer waters. Heading over towards South Central, looking at a weak variable flow all across the area, and then we'll see seas between 2 and 3 feet across the western Gulf of Alaska and through the Cook Inlet. And be on the lookout for some patchy fog across the inlet during the morning hours on Friday. As we head into your Saturday forecast, a little bit wind picking up across the western part of the Gulf of Alaska as that low pressure moves to the north. So small craft advisory to the east of the Barren Islands there. And then the seas on this day will be between 3 and 8 feet across the western Gulf of Alaska. Prince William Sound will be quiet at 2 feet. And then the inlet areas and towards the Shelikof Strait, expect seas to gradually increase between 2 and then to 6 feet across the Shelikof Strait. And looking at your Alaska Peninsula, a southeasterly flow mainly, a little bit east towards Kodiak Island. And then we'll see seas on this day mainly 2 feet for the Bering and 5 feet across the Pacific waters. As we head into your Saturday forecast, the winds are going to pick up a little bit out of the southeast, around 25 knots just to the south of Kodiak Island. Seas will be between 6 and 8 feet again, and then 3 feet across the Bering side. Across the Aleutian chain for your Friday forecast, expect a southeasterly flow across the eastern half of the Aleutians and then turning towards the northwest as you head towards the western Aleutians at 15 to 20 knots, so all under small craft here, and seas will be between 3 and 5 feet across the entire area. Heading into your Saturday forecast, a little bit of a change of direction out of the northwest and then becoming more westerly and towards the south across the eastern Aleutians. Seas on this day will be slightly higher, with seas between 4 and 7 feet across the Bering side and then around 8 to 9 feet on the North Pacific side. Looking at your forecast for the western coastal areas, between 10 and 15 knots will be primarily out of the northeast to easterly flow, except towards the just south of Nunivak Island out of the southeast. And then seas will be between 3 and 5 feet for your Friday. And as we head into Saturday, a little bit stronger winds coming out of the northeast direction in the northern Bering and across the Nunivak Island area out of the east. And then along the central and northern Bering, also change of direction and winds from the Pribilofs out of the southeast to the northeast as you head towards St. Matthew Island. Seas again on this day will be between 3 and 6 feet. And looking at your north and northwestern coastal areas, back to Kotzebue Sound, looking at wind speeds a little bit stronger across the northwest, out of the southwest at 25 knots, Kotzebue Sound, out of the southeast at 15 knots. Higher seas along this area between 4 and 6 feet. And then across northeastern areas on the Beaufort Sea coast, we'll see lighter wind speeds out of the easterly direction, around 5 knots for tomorrow, seas 1 to 2 feet. Looking at your Saturday forecast, wind speeds will pick up with the low pressure moving to the northwestern coast. We'll see wind direction out of the southwest primarily, with seas along here between 4 and 5 feet, and 2 feet across the Beaufort Sea coast between 10 and 15 knot winds out of the south to southwest. Taking a recap of looking at your daytime weather maps, we saw low pressure across the Aleutian area bring some showery conditions and patchy fog all the way up across the coastal areas in the Arctic, and then high pressure suppressing most of the rain showers this afternoon. Chance for isolated thunderstorms just to the south of the Brooks Range, some afternoon shower activity across the south central coastal areas, mainly along the mountains, and high pressure will stay in control across the southeast overnight, so we'll see some breaks in the clouds. And then as we head into your forecast for tomorrow morning, some patchy fog along the inlet and clearing out later in the day. Low pressure moving towards the southern Gulf, but mainly keeping rain in the southern Gulf. Across the southern half of the state, we'll see mostly clear skies with mountain showers popping up in the afternoon. Weak low pressure across the northern tier of the state will keep some light showery conditions, but ridging is moving back into the western parts of the state. Low pressure across the Bering will bring some gusty winds here, and then we'll see some light rain continuing and moving towards the east, towards Bristol Bay area on your forecast on Saturday. Again, the high pressure is going to remain in control across the state. Some afternoon showers for Friday and Saturday, drying out towards the weekend, mainly dry conditions across the southeast. Now, just be on the lookout for some gusty winds across the eastern Bering, and we'll be back with another forecast update for you again tomorrow. Hope to see you. Have a great night.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.